She doesn't know how to read a product roadmap. Yesterday she asked me what technical debt meant. And the timeline she presented to the board last week? It's impossible. Literally impossible. What do you mean? She's promising AI functionality that would require 6 months of machine learning model development, but she's allocated 2 weeks for it. She thinks we can just plug in artificial intelligence like it's a WordPress widget. I felt a familiar surge of frustration. Have you talked to Brent about it? Lucas snorted. I tried. He told me to trust the process and embrace the learning curve. Mary, she's going to destroy everything we built. The next week brought the first client complaints. Nexra's pilot program included 3 major enterprise clients who were testing the next-gen platform ahead of the full launch. The feedback was not positive. The workflow automation is completely non-functional, wrote Janet Morrison from TechFlow Solutions. The AI components seem to be placeholder text, and the user interface is riddled with bugs that make basic tasks impossible. We're concerned about the timeline, added David Park from Innovation Dynamics. The features promised in the initial demo are nowhere to be found in the current build. Brent went into crisis mode. He scheduled emergency meetings with the development team, demanding explanations for the unexpected technical challenges. He threw blame around like confetti, at Lucas for insufficient technical leadership, at the QA team for inadequate testing protocols, and even at me for failing to properly document the original specifications. But I had documented everything. Every specification, every requirement, every technical decision was meticulously recorded in the project management system. The problem wasn't documentation, it was leadership. During one particularly tense all-hands meeting, Brent addressed the team with his usual confidence. We're experiencing some growing pains, he said. But that's normal for innovative projects. Alyssa is doing an incredible job navigating these challenges. Alyssa nodded along, but I noticed her hands shaking slightly as she shuffled through her notes. The key is to stay focused on our core objectives, Brent continued. Sometimes that means making difficult decisions about scope and priorities. Translation: they were cutting features. The ambitious AI integration that had been the centerpiece of the project was being scaled back to basic automation. The predictive analytics component was being pushed to Phase 2. What remained was a stripped-down version of what we'd originally planned, and even that was behind schedule. The board was starting to take notice. Zara Patel, one of the sharpest members of Nexra's leadership team, had been asking increasingly pointed questions about the project's progress. Her background in venture capital had given her a nose for projects that were heading off the rails. After a particularly uncomfortable company-wide demo where Alyssa struggled to explain basic functionality, Zara approached me in the hallway. Mary, can you stay behind for a moment? She asked quietly. I'd like to discuss something with you. My heart rate spiked. This was either very good or very bad. Of course, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. As the conference room emptied, Zara closed the door and turned to me with a direct gaze that made me feel like I was under a microscope. I want to understand something, she said. 6 months ago, you successfully launched Cloud Sync Enterprise. It was on time, under budget, and exceeded all performance metrics. Now, a project that should be well within your expertise is falling apart under different leadership. Can you help me understand what changed? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could feel my career balanced on a knife's edge. Answer too directly, and I'd look like a bitter employee trying to undermine my boss. Answer too diplomatically, and I'd be complicit in the disaster unfolding around us. The project requirements haven't changed, I said carefully. The technical challenges are similar to what we've solved before. The team is the same group that delivered Cloud Sync successfully. Zara studied my face. But the approach is different. Different how? I took a breath. This was the moment. Would you like to see the original technical specifications? Zara's eyebrows raised. You have them. I have everything. The initial requirements analysis, the technical architecture framework, the implementation timeline, the risk assessment matrix. I documented the entire project plan before. I paused. Before the leadership transition. Show me. I opened my laptop and pulled up the comprehensive project folder I'd been maintaining. Zara's eyes widened as she scrolled through the documents. Mary, this is incredibly thorough. The technical specifications alone must have taken weeks to develop. About a month, I said. I wanted to make sure we had a solid foundation before we started development. And this timeline. She pointed to a detailed Gantt chart. This shows the AI integration being completed by next month. That was the original plan. The machine learning models were supposed to be developed in parallel with the user interface. We'd already identified the training datasets and established the API frameworks. Zara continued scrolling, her expression growing more serious. These client requirements documents, they're completely different from what was presented to the board last week. The scope was changed after the leadership transition. Several key features were deprioritized or moved to future phases. Without board approval. I don't know what approvals were obtained. Zara closed the laptop and looked at me directly. Mary, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. In your professional opinion, is this project salvageable under current leadership? The question I'd been dreading. The question I'd been asking myself every day for the past month. Not without significant changes, I said quietly. The technical decisions being made now are inconsistent with the original architecture. The development team is working without clear specifications. The timeline has become unrealistic, and the quality standards are being compromised. What would you do differently? I'd return to the original technical specifications. Re-establish clear communication channels with the development team. Implement proper testing protocols. And I'd be honest with the board about the timeline required to deliver a quality product. Zara nodded slowly. Thank you for being candid with me. The next few days were tense. I threw myself into my meaningless audit framework project, trying to avoid the increasingly panicked conversations happening around Alyssa's desk. The next major milestone was approaching, and everyone knew it was going to be a disaster. Then came the demo. The quarterly board meeting included a presentation to potential investors, a crucial opportunity to showcase Nexra's innovative capabilities. Alyssa had spent weeks preparing, working late into the evening with Brent to perfect her presentation. The demo started smoothly. Alyssa's presentation skills were polished, her slides were visually impressive, and her talking points hit all the right buzzwords. The investors looked engaged, nodding along as she described the revolutionary AI-powered workflow optimization platform. Then came the live demonstration. Now I'll show you the predictive analytics in action, Alyssa said confidently, clicking to a screen that was supposed to display real-time data analysis. The screen was blank. Let me just... Alyssa clicked frantically, but nothing happened. The room fell silent. Technical difficulties, Brent jumped in smoothly. Let's move to the next feature. But Alyssa, flustered, had already moved to what she thought was a safer demonstration, the AI-powered task prioritization system that was supposed to be the centerpiece of the platform. Watch as the system automatically reorganizes tasks based on priority algorithms, she said, clicking on a button labeled Optimize Workflow. An error message appeared, feature not implemented. Please contact system administrator. The silence in the room was deafening. Board members exchanged glances. Investors shifted in their seats. Caleb Ford's face had gone pale. I'm sorry, said Dr. Rebecca Martinez, one of the potential investors. Are these features not actually functional? They're in beta, Alyssa said quickly. We're in the final testing phase. But the timeline you presented shows full deployment next month, pressed another investor. How can you deploy features that aren't yet functional? Alyssa looked to Brent for help, but he was staring at his phone, jaw clenched. The development team is working around the clock, she said. These are just minor integration issues. Minor. Zara spoke up from the back of the room. Ms. Monroe, can you explain to me how the AI models are being trained? What datasets are you using? Alyssa's face went blank. The datasets. For the machine learning algorithms. The predictive analytics you demonstrated, or attempted to demonstrate, would require trained models. What's your training methodology? The technical team handles those details. I focus on the strategic vision. I see. And what's your go-to-market strategy for the AI components specifically? Well, we're targeting enterprise clients who need advanced automation. That's not a go-to-market strategy, Zara said firmly. That's a target market. How are you positioning the AI capabilities against competitors? What's your pricing model for the machine learning features? What's your support framework for AI-related technical issues? Alyssa looked like a deer in headlights. Brent, could you help with the technical questions? But Brent was sweating now. These are implementation details, we're still finalizing. Implementation details. Dr. Martinez leaned forward. These are fundamental business questions. If you're launching an AI product next month, you should have clear answers to these questions. The meeting ended 15 minutes early, with uncomfortable handshakes and promises to follow up with additional technical documentation. As the investors filed out, I heard one of them whisper to another, "That was embarrassing. They clearly don't have a functional product." Zara approached me as I was packing up my laptop. "Mary, I need to see you in my office. Now." Zara's office was on the executive floor, a place I'd only been a handful of times in my 4 years at Nexera. As I sat across from her polished desk, I noticed a stack of printed documents that looked suspiciously familiar. "I've been reviewing your project documentation," she said without preamble. "And I've been asking some difficult questions." My mouth went dry. What kind of questions? Questions about decision-making processes. About project approval workflows. About technical competency assessments. She leaned forward. "Mary, I need you to understand something. What happened in that meeting today wasn't just a technical glitch. It was a fundamental failure of leadership." "I'm not sure what you mean." "I mean that Alyssa Monroe has been leading a multi-million-dollar product development initiative for 6 weeks, and she doesn't understand the basic technology she's supposed to be managing." Zara's voice was steady, but I could hear the controlled anger underneath. "More importantly, the person who does understand it, you, has been sidelined for reasons that are becoming increasingly unclear." She pulled out a thick folder. "I've been doing some investigating. Did you know that Alyssa's employment reference from her previous company was provided by Brent Calloway personally?" I blinked. "What?" "Brent called her previous employer directly and spoke to someone he knew there. The formal HR reference was positive but generic. The personal reference was glowing. Almost like he was advocating for her specifically." My mind raced. "That's unusual." "It's more than unusual. It's a potential conflict of interest. Especially when combined with some other interesting patterns I've discovered." Zara opened the folder and pulled out what looked like restaurant receipts. Brent's expense reports from the past 3 months. "Notice anything?" I scanned the documents. High-end restaurants, always for 2 people, almost always on Friday evenings. These look like dinner meetings. That's what they're documented as. Client meetings, vendor negotiations, strategic planning sessions. But I cross-referenced them with Brent's calendar and our CRM system. There are no clients or vendors associated with these dates. The implications hit me like a physical blow. "You think?" "I think Brent Calloway is in a personal relationship with Alyssa Monroe, and has been using company resources to support it while simultaneously destroying a critical project to cover for her incompetence." I sat back in my chair, trying to process this information. It explained so much: Brent's unwavering support, his deflection of technical questions, his willingness to blame everyone except Alyssa for the project's failures. "But that's not the worst part," Zara continued. "The worst part is that he's been systematically undermining you to make room for someone who is objectively unqualified for the position." She pulled out another document, a performance review. My performance review. Brent submitted this to HR 2 weeks ago. He's documenting you as resistant to change and lacking strategic vision. He's building a case to have you removed from the company entirely. I stared at the document in disbelief. After 4 years of exemplary performance, after successfully leading the company's most profitable product launch, I was being characterized as a problem employee. "This is insane," I said quietly. "Yes, it is. And it's about to stop." Zara closed the folder. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I want you there." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to tell the truth. All of it. The original project specifications, the technical decisions that have been made, the timeline implications, everything. Can you do that?" I thought about the past 6 weeks. The humiliation, the frustration, the watching a team I'd built slowly disintegrate under incompetent leadership. I thought about Alyssa stumbling through technical questions she should have mastered weeks ago. I thought about Brent's patronizing dismissal of my capabilities. Yes, I said. I can do that. The next morning, I arrived at the office early and spent an hour organizing my documentation. Charts, timelines, technical specifications, email threads, Slack logs, everything I'd been meticulously tracking for the past month and a half. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the main conference room. As I walked in with my laptop and a stack of printed documents, I saw Brent and Alyssa sitting at the far end of the table, whispering intensely to each other. Caleb Ford sat at the head of the table, looking tired and confused. The other board members, Zara, Dr. Sarah Kim from our technical advisory board, and Michael Chen from finance, were reviewing documents with serious expressions. Good morning, everyone, Caleb began. Zara has called this meeting to address some concerns about the next-gen project. Brent, would you like to start with a status update? Brent stood up with his usual confidence. Absolutely. I want to address the concerns from yesterday's investor meeting head-on. While we encountered some technical difficulties during the demo, I want to assure the board that these are minor integration issues that the development team is actively resolving. Define minor, Dr. Kim interrupted. Well, the core functionality is solid. We're just fine-tuning the user interface and optimizing the AI algorithms. Brent, Zara said calmly, the features that failed during the demo, the predictive analytics and task prioritization system, are these features currently functional in any capacity? Brent glanced at Alyssa, who was staring at her hands. They're in various stages of development. That's not what I asked. Are they functional? Define functional. I mean, can a user log into the system and use these features to accomplish their intended purpose? The silence stretched out uncomfortably. Finally, Alyssa cleared her throat. They're not fully implemented yet, she said quietly. And when will they be fully implemented? Asked Michael Chen. The development team is working on a revised timeline, Brent said quickly. I'd like to hear from the development team, Zara said. Mary, you were the original architect for this project. Can you give us your assessment of the current situation? This was it. I stood up and connected my laptop to the conference room display. The next-gen project was originally designed as a 3-phase implementation. I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Phase 1 was basic workflow automation, Phase 2 was predictive analytics, and Phase 3 was AI-powered task optimization. The timeline for complete implementation was 12 months. I clicked to the first slide, the original project roadmap I developed. This was the technical architecture approved by the board in February. As you can see, we're currently 6 weeks behind schedule on Phase 1 alone. What's causing the delays? Asked Dr. Kim. Several factors. First, the technical specifications were modified after the leadership transition without corresponding adjustments to the timeline. Second, the development team has been working without clear requirements documentation. Third, key architectural decisions have been made without proper technical review. I clicked to the next slide, a comparison chart showing the original specifications versus the current implementation. For example, the AI integration was originally planned to use machine learning models trained on enterprise workflow data. The current implementation attempts to use generic task classification algorithms, which can't provide the predictive capabilities we promised to clients. Who made the decision to change the technical approach? Asked Zara. I glanced at Brent, who was glaring at me with barely concealed anger. The changes were made after the leadership transition, I said diplomatically. Mary, Caleb said slowly, in your professional opinion, is this project salvageable under the current timeline? Not without significant changes to either the scope or the timeline. The AI features that were demonstrated yesterday, or attempted to be demonstrated, would require approximately 4 months of development time to implement properly. 4 months. Alyssa spoke up. That's impossible. We promised delivery next month. With respect, I said, turning to face her, the timeline was unrealistic from the beginning. The technical complexity of the AI integration was significantly underestimated. How was it underestimated? Asked Dr. Kim. The current approach treats AI integration as a simple plug-in feature. But machine learning algorithms require training datasets, testing protocols, and iterative optimization. The infrastructure to support predictive analytics requires significant back-end development. I clicked to the next slide, a technical architecture diagram. This is what the AI integration actually requires. Data pre-processing pipelines, model training infrastructure, real-time prediction APIs, and comprehensive error handling. The current implementation has none of these components. Alyssa, Zara said quietly, can you explain to the board how you plan to implement these technical requirements? Alyssa looked like she might be sick. I was relying on the development team to handle the technical details. But as project leader, you would need to understand the technical requirements to make informed decisions about timeline and resource allocation. I understand the high-level concepts. Do you? Dr. Kim leaned forward. Can you explain to me what a training dataset is? Alyssa's face went pale. It's data that the AI uses to learn. What kind of data? How much data? How is it processed? What are the quality requirements? That's really more of a technical question for the development team. Ms. Monroe, Dr. Kim said firmly, you're managing a project that is 80% technical implementation. If you don't understand the technical requirements, how can you manage the project effectively? The room fell silent. Caleb Ford looked like he was seeing Alyssa clearly for the first time. Brent, he said slowly, what was your rationale for assigning Ms. Monroe to lead this project? Brent's confident mask was finally slipping. Alyssa brings a fresh perspective to product development. Her consumer-focused background offers valuable insights. But she doesn't have technical product management experience, said Michael Chen. Experience isn't everything. Sometimes fresh thinking is more valuable than institutional knowledge. Fresh thinking. Zara's voice was sharp. Brent, this is a multi-million-dollar project with committed delivery dates to enterprise clients. This isn't the time for on-the-job training. Everyone starts somewhere, Brent said defensively. Not as the lead on critical projects, Caleb said firmly. Brent, I need to ask you directly, what is your personal relationship with Ms. Monroe? The question hung in the air like a bomb. Brent's face flushed red. I don't understand what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Do you have a personal relationship with Ms. Monroe outside of work? Brent and Alyssa exchanged glances. The silence stretched out until it became an answer in itself. I think, Zara said quietly, we need to ask Ms. Monroe and Mr. Calloway to step outside while the board discusses this situation. They left the room in silence, and I could hear their hushed, urgent conversation in the hallway. The board's discussion was brief and decisive. When Brent and Alyssa were called back in, Caleb's expression was grim. Effective immediately, Brent, you are suspended pending a full investigation into potential conflicts of interest and mismanagement of company resources. Ms. Monroe, your employment with Nexera is terminated. Alyssa's face crumpled. Brent stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're destroying careers based on speculation and... We're protecting this company based on documented evidence of poor judgment and project mismanagement, Caleb said firmly. The decision is final. As they gathered their things and left the conference room, Zara turned to me. Mary, the board would like to offer you the position of Director of Product Strategy, effective immediately. You would have full authority over the next-gen project and report directly to the board. I looked around the table at the faces of people who had finally seen the truth. I accept, I said. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of reconstruction. My first order of business was to assess the actual state of the next-gen project, and the results were even worse than I'd feared. The codebase was a mess of half-implemented features and architectural inconsistencies. The development team was demoralized and confused. The client relationships were strained to the breaking point. But underneath all the damage, the foundation I'd originally built was still solid. Okay, team, I said during my first meeting as Director of Product Strategy, let's start with the truth. Where are we really? Lucas Kim, who looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past 6 weeks, pulled up the actual project status on his laptop. We're about 30% complete on Phase 1, he said. The basic workflow automation is partially functional, but the database architecture needs to be rebuilt to support the AI integration. The user interface is cosmetically complete but functionally broken. How long to fix it? If we return to the original specifications? About 8 weeks for stable Phase 1 release. 4 months for the full AI integration. I looked around the room at the faces of people who had watched their project slowly disintegrate under incompetent leadership. They were exhausted, frustrated, but still professional. Here's what we're going to do, I said. We're going back to the original technical specifications. We're going to rebuild this properly. And we're going to deliver something we can be proud of. The transformation was remarkable. Within days, the team's energy had shifted completely. Having clear specifications, realistic timelines, and leadership that understood the technical challenges made all the difference. I instituted daily stand-ups with actual substance, not just status updates, but problem-solving sessions where technical challenges were addressed directly. I established clear communication channels between the development team and the business stakeholders. Most importantly, I took responsibility for every decision, good or bad. Mary, Sarah Chen approached me after a particularly productive sprint review. I just wanted to say thank you. It's been so long since we've had leadership that actually understands what we're building. The client relationships required more delicate handling. I scheduled individual calls with each of the pilot program participants to assess the damage and rebuild trust. I want to be completely transparent with you, I told Janet Morrison from TechFlow Solutions. The project has been significantly mismanaged. We're implementing a recovery plan that will deliver a stable, functional product, but it will take longer than originally promised. How much longer? Phase 1 will be delivered in 8 weeks instead of next month. The full AI integration will be ready in 4 months. Janet was quiet for a moment. Mary, I appreciate the honesty. The previous communication was frustrating. We kept getting promises that didn't align with what we were seeing in the actual product. That won't happen again. You'll get weekly progress reports with actual metrics and realistic timelines. Can you deliver on these new timelines? Yes. And if anything changes, you'll know immediately. Within a month, the project was back on track. The development team was hitting their sprint goals consistently. The client feedback was positive. The board was impressed with the turnaround. But the most satisfying moment came during a company-wide meeting where I presented the first stable build of the next-gen platform. This is the workflow automation interface, I explained, clicking through a clean, functional user experience. As you can see, tasks are automatically prioritized based on configurable business rules. The system learns from user behavior to optimize workflow efficiency. I clicked to the next demonstration. And this is the predictive analytics dashboard. The system analyzes historical data to forecast project timelines and resource requirements. Everything worked flawlessly. The room was silent, but it was a different kind of silence than the one that had greeted Alyssa's failed demonstration. This was the silence of people seeing competent engineering in action. Questions? I asked. Dr. Martinez, the same investor who had been so unimpressed with the previous demo, raised her hand. This is impressive work, she said. How confident are you in the timeline for the full AI integration? Very confident. The machine learning models are already in training. We have established data pre-processing pipelines and testing protocols. The infrastructure is designed to scale. And the go-to-market strategy. We're targeting enterprise clients who currently use manual workflow management systems. Our pricing model is based on seats and data volume, with additional charges for advanced AI features. We have a dedicated support team trained on the technical aspects of the machine learning algorithms. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. Much more comprehensive than the previous presentation. After the meeting, Zara approached me in the hallway. Mary, I want you to know that the board has been extremely impressed with your turnaround of this project. You've not only salvaged a critical initiative but demonstrated exceptional leadership under pressure. Thank you. I'm just glad we were able to get back on track. It's more than that. You've shown that competence and integrity matter more than politics or personal relationships. That's a valuable lesson for everyone in this company. The following month brought vindication in ways I hadn't expected. The next-gen platform's successful launch generated significant industry buzz. TechCrunch ran a feature article titled How Nexera Rebuilt Its Flagship AI Platform in Record Time, which included a detailed interview with me about the technical challenges we'd overcome. The key was returning to solid engineering principles, I explained to the reporter. When you have clear specifications, realistic timelines, and leadership that understands the technical requirements, teams can accomplish remarkable things. The article mentioned nothing about the previous management failures, but everyone in the industry knew. Word travels fast in tech circles, and the story of a project's dramatic turnaround under new leadership was the kind of narrative that resonated with professionals who'd experienced similar situations. Dr. Martinez's investment firm ended up leading a $15 million Series B round for Nexera, citing the next-gen platform's technical excellence and our team's execution capabilities. During the announcement, she specifically mentioned their exceptional product leadership that had made the investment possible. But the most satisfying moment came 6 months later, during the annual company retreat. I was presenting the product roadmap for the next fiscal year when Caleb Ford stood up to address the room. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge something," he said. 6 months ago, I was untouchable at Nexera. I'd just led the beta testing and successful rollout of our flagship platform, CloudSync Enterprise, a project that brought in $2.3 million in new contracts within the first quarter. The product roadmap I'd architected was being used as a template across 3 different divisions. My team respected me. The board knew my name. Then Brent Calloway decided I was too comfortable. "Mary, you've done incredible work," he said during our weekly one-on-one, leaning back in his ergonomic chair with that practice smile. "But I think it's time we shake things up a bit." I should have seen it coming. The subtle shifts had been happening for weeks, my input being tabled for later discussion in meetings, my project updates getting buried in lengthy team emails, my direct reports suddenly being told to run things by Brent first before implementing my suggestions. "What do you mean by shake things up?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Well, we're launching the Next Gen initiative next month. It's going to be our biggest product push yet, AI-integrated workflow automation with predictive analytics. Revolutionary stuff." I felt my pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of project I'd been preparing for. I'd been researching machine learning applications in workflow management for months, had even presented a preliminary framework to the leadership team back in January. "I'm ready for it," I said. "I've already started drafting technical specifications for the AI integration components, and I think we could have a prototype ready for Q3 testing if we—" "Actually," Brent interrupted, "I'm giving the lead to Alyssa Monroe. She's bringing some fresh energy to the table." The words hit me like ice water. Alyssa Monroe had been hired 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. She came from a marketing background at a lifestyle brand, had never managed a technical product team, and had spent her first 2 weeks asking me what a sprint retrospective was. "I don't understand," I said carefully. "Alyssa doesn't have experience with enterprise software development. She's never managed a product lifecycle or—" "Mary." Brent's voice carried that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. "You're thinking too narrowly. Alyssa brings a consumer-focused perspective that could really modernize our approach. Besides, you're more of a support person, excellent at execution, but leadership requires a different skill set." Support person. The phrase echoed in my head as I walked back to my desk in a daze. I'd been leading cross-functional teams for 4 years. I'd managed budgets exceeding $5 million. I'd personally debugged critical system failures at 2 a.m. and presented quarterly results to the board. But I was a support person. The news spread through the office like wildfire. Lucas Kim, my former technical lead, appeared at my desk within an hour. "This is insane," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "You built the entire framework for this kind of project. You literally wrote the book on workflow optimization here." "It's fine," I lied. "Maybe it's time I focused on something else." But it wasn't fine. Over the next week, I watched as my team, my carefully assembled, perfectly coordinated team, was reassigned to report to Alyssa. The conference room where we'd held our daily stand-ups was suddenly off-limits for leadership meetings. My access to the product analytics dashboard was mysteriously revoked due to restructuring. I was moved to a special project, developing a comprehensive audit framework for future product initiatives. It was busy work, dressed up with important-sounding language, but essentially meaningless. I'd been benched. The worst part wasn't even the professional humiliation. It was watching Alyssa flounder while everyone pretended not to notice. During her first team meeting, she spent 20 minutes explaining her vision for the project, a series of marketing buzzwords strung together with no technical substance. She talked about synergistic user experiences and leveraging cross-platform optimization vectors, while my former team members exchanged confused glances. I'd built my reputation on substance, on diving deep into technical challenges and emerging with elegant solutions. Alyssa's approach was all surface, polished presentations with no underlying framework, confident assertions about timelines she didn't understand, and a disturbing tendency to defer every technical question to the development team. 2 weeks into her leadership, I was grabbing coffee in the break room when I overheard her talking to Brent by the printer. "What exactly is a product spec sheet?" she was asking. "The engineers keep asking me for one, but I don't want to look stupid." Brent's response was too quiet for me to hear, but I caught his reassuring tone. I stood there, stirring my coffee mechanically, and realized that something much bigger was happening here. This wasn't just about inexperience or poor judgment. This was about something else entirely. 3 weeks into Alyssa's leadership, the cracks were becoming impossible to ignore. The first major deadline was missed by 6 days. The second by 2 weeks. The engineers were starting to revolt, not openly, but in the way engineers do, with increasingly specific technical questions that exposed the gaps in Alyssa's knowledge. "Can we review the API architecture decisions for the ML integration?" asked Sarah Chen, our senior developer, during a team meeting. Alyssa blinked. "Of course. The API architecture. Right. Well, I think we should focus on making it more robust." "Robust how?" Sarah pressed. "Are we talking about rate limiting, error handling, or data validation protocols?" "All of the above," Alyssa said quickly. "Lucas, can you handle the technical deep dive on that?" Lucas nodded, but I caught his eye from across the room. He looked as frustrated as I felt. The meetings became painful exercises in creative deflection. Alyssa had mastered the art of responding to technical questions with management speak, but the team was getting restless. Timelines were slipping. Code reviews were backing up. The integration testing that should have been completed weeks ago was still in preliminary stages. Meanwhile, Brent was doing damage control. During leadership updates, he'd frame every missed deadline as a strategic pivot or iterative improvement process. When CEO Caleb Ford asked about delays, Brent would smoothly redirect the conversation to team optimization and scaling challenges. But I was watching. And more importantly, I was documenting. Every missed deadline went into my private folder. Every confused email from the engineering team. Every client complaint that trickled up from the pilot testing phase. I wasn't planning anything specific, I just couldn't help myself. After 4 years of obsessive project tracking, thoroughness had become second nature. The Slack logs were particularly revealing. Alyssa's direct messages to team members were full of questions that any product manager should have known the answers to. Her calendar showed back-to-back meetings with Brent, often scheduled immediately after technical discussions she couldn't navigate. "Mary," Lucas appeared at my desk one afternoon, looking around nervously. "Can we talk?" "Privately." We walked to the stairwell, one of the few places in the office where conversations couldn't be overheard. "This is a disaster," he said without preamble. 6 months ago, we nearly lost one of our most critical projects due to poor leadership decisions. Mary Thompson not only saved that project but transformed it into our most successful product launch in company history. The room erupted in applause. I looked around at the faces of colleagues who had watched the entire drama unfold, who had seen competence triumph over politics, merit over manipulation. "Mary has been promoted to Vice President of Product Strategy," Caleb continued. "She'll be leading our entire product portfolio going forward." Lucas Kim, who had been promoted to Senior Technical Lead on my recommendation, caught my eye from across the room and nodded approvingly. The team that had suffered through weeks of confused leadership was now thriving under clear direction and technical expertise. After the presentation, I found myself in the hotel bar with Zara, celebrating the successful year. "You know what I learned from all this?" she said, raising her glass. "What's that?" "You don't need to raise your voice to lead. You don't need to play politics or manipulate people. You just have to be undeniable." I smiled, thinking back to that moment 6 months ago when I'd been sitting in her office, unsure whether speaking the truth would end my career or save it. "Being undeniable," I repeated. "I like that." The best leaders are the ones who make everyone around them better. You rebuilt that team's confidence, restored client relationships, and delivered a product that exceeded expectations. That's not just good management, that's leadership. As I walked back to my room that night, I reflected on the journey. The humiliation of being demoted had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. It had shown me the difference between real leadership and the kind of shallow charisma that looks impressive in meetings but crumbles under pressure. Brent's investigation had concluded with his termination for misuse of company resources and conflicts of interest. Alyssa had quietly disappeared from the industry, her LinkedIn profile eventually showing a return to marketing roles at smaller companies. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only relief that the truth had finally emerged. The next-gen platform continued to exceed performance metrics, with client satisfaction scores reaching all-time highs. The AI integration that had seemed impossible under previous leadership was now being used as a case study in other companies' product development courses. But more importantly, I had learned something valuable about my own resilience. When everything had been stripped away, my team, my project, my reputation, I had discovered that competence and integrity were the only things that truly mattered. You can't fake technical expertise. You can't charm your way through complex engineering challenges. You can't build lasting success on personal relationships alone. 3 months later, I was invited to speak at the National Product Management Conference about leading through crisis, how technical excellence drives business success. As I stood on stage, looking out at an audience of product managers, engineers, and executives, I thought about all the people who had supported me through the darkest period of my career. Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, I told the audience. It's about being the most prepared, the most knowledgeable, and the most committed to excellence. When you combine deep technical understanding with genuine care for your team and your customers, you become unstoppable. The presentation ended with a standing ovation, but the real victory had happened months earlier, in that conference room where I had calmly presented the truth to a board that was finally ready to listen. Today, as I sit in my corner office with Vice President of Product Strategy on the nameplate, I keep a framed copy of the original next-gen project specifications on my desk. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that competence, preparation, and integrity will always triumph over politics and manipulation. The lesson had been painful but invaluable. You don't need to fight dirty to win. You just need to be excellent at what you do and brave enough to stand up for what's right. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply being undeniably good at your job.